So there are numerous examples of that, just like, what's the famous one? Ajamil. Ajamil was a nice Brahmin boy, got married in Vedic tradition. You forgot your little doodaki thing, eh? Or your little doodaki.
Stuck it on the speakers.
Okay. So he, one time he went in the forest and he came across a Shudra couple, right, engaging in illicit activities, and he was attracted. And he looked, he was watching it, oh no, shouldn't watch that. And he was looking again, right? So this thought came into his head, right? He was contemplating the objects of the senses, right? What happens if you contemplate the objects of the senses? Then you develop attachment, right? From attachment, what happens? What develops? Lust. And when lust develops, then you lose it, right? You lose your intelligence, right? So, he found out, he became attracted to this young prostitute lady, and he tracked her down, and then he was spending time with her. He was taking all the family jewels, and he was, spending money on this prostitute, and eventually abandoned his wife and his family, his parents and everything, took all the family wealth and was spending it on this prostitute. And he had 10 children with her, right? So his youngest one, he named Narayan, right? So then, at the time of his death, he was an old man, right? And he saw the Yamaduts. Do you know who Yamaduts are? Who are the Yamaduts? Do you know?
Yamdut.
They're the messengers of Yamaraj, right? And who's Yamaraj? Do you know who Yamaraj is? You're not training him. You gotta train him, because he's going to have to see Yamaraj if you don't train him, right? So, Yamaraj is the god of death. He comes for the sinful people. Who comes for the nice people? The good people, the devotees.
Vishnu Dutas.
Vishnu Dutas, yeah. Are they four-handed? They don't look like punk rockers. Have you seen these punks in the street with spiked hair and things through their cheeks and, they're punks, they call them punks. So, they're like Yamaduts, and they have nasty dogs and everything, real savage, even worse than bull terriers, So then they come and they approach that person that's going to leave his body, and then they come and they stick a rope around his neck, and they pull the soul out of the body, and then they drag him through many hellish conditions to the abode of Yamaraj, where he gets his suitable punishment and then his next body, right? So he saw these three Yamaduts come, and then and out of fear, he was very attached to his youngest son. His youngest son was a problem, right? So he was attached to it. Parents were attached to their kids, right? So then he said, Narayan, come here. But then he was thinking, what can this guy do? There's these fearful personalities, right? They're going to come and rip me out of my body. What can this guy do? So then he thought of the real Narayan, right? And then immediately, what happened? Whatever you contemplate at the time of death, Krishna says, that forms the basis for your next life. So he was on the point of death, right? So he was thinking of Narayan. So Narayan, he sent the Narayan Dukes, the Vishnu Dukes. And they came and they said to the Yamaduts, hey, what are you guys doing? Well, we're taking this guy to the Soul Master. He's a rascal, a very sinful person. He's killed so many people in his life, right? He's committed, adultery with a prostitute, left his bona fide wife, and he's a rascal. So we're taking him for his punishment, the Yamaraj. And he said, the Vishnu Dukes, they said, you don't know religious principles. What did he say before you guys came? Right? He said the name of Narayan. So that means all of his sins are wiped out. Right? So that's how powerful the names of God are. You chant any of the bona fide names of God, right? Jehovah, Allah, Yahweh, the names of God. But they don't all take you to the same destination. If you chant Jehovah, you know, you might get taken to a place where you can sit on a cloud and play a harp, you know. But you don't get to go to Vaikuntha. If you chant Narayan's name, then you can go to Vaikuntha, right? But if you chant Krishna's name, and if you're very, very fortunate, you can go to Golok. Very fortunate. If you have a bona fide spiritual master, it can take you in that direction. So, these names of God are very powerful. Alright, so we spent a bit of time on that one. Any questions, comments? Yep, comments? Alright, so Namno Balasya Yashahi Papa Budir Navijite Tasya Yamahi Shudihi. What's that one?
I think it's to consider the glories of the chanting of Hare Krishna to be equal to other devotional practices, something like that, to Kamakanda or something like that?
No.
Nope. Okay.
To think that the Hare Krishna mantra can, you know?
Doing the offences on the by taking the shelter of Harinam and doing the offense, he will protect you.
Yes. But this is classed as the greatest offense. Because what you're doing is you're using the highest jewel, Krishna Nam, for some mundane purpose, you know? So, you know, it's here, counteract all sinful activities. Oh, I said, doesn't matter if I go to the pub and drink some booze and, you know, pick up some member of the opposite sex or something, and engaging in illicit relationships. I chant Hare Krishna, so I'm saved. No, you can't do that. It's the greatest offense. So you can't chant, you know, like the Catholics, right? They have a thing called confession, right? On a Saturday you go to confess to the priest, and he says, oh yes, you've done very bad. Now go and say so many Hail Marys and put some money in the box, right? So, and then on Saturday night, what do? You go out and you commit those sinful activities that you confess to during the day, right? So this is hypocrisy. You can't do like that. So, to think that the Hare Krishna mantra can counteract all sinful activities, and when we therefore go on with these sinful activities and at the same time chant the Hare Krishna mantra to neutralize them is the greatest offense the Lord speak of Harinam. Right, we've got to rush on because we haven't got much time. Dhamma Vrata Tyaga Hutadi Sarva Shubha Kriya Shamyam Api Pramada. You know what that one is, Krishna Prabhu?
That's the previous one.
Huh?
That was the previous one. To consider the chanting Hare Krishna to be equal to Kamakanda activities and such lower.
Chanting the Hare Krishna mantra to be one of the auspicious ritualistic mentioned in the Vedas as fruitive activities. So, you could want wealth, you go to Ganesh, he'll give you wealth. But don't waste Krishna's time. He's very busy in the kunjas of Vrindavan, engaging with the gopis, right, having lots of fun, playing with the cowherd boys, playing with the calves. He's being chastised by Mother Yasoda, who's twisting his ear and saying, you're a rascal, you've been stealing butter from the neighbours' houses. You're not allowed to do that. So, number 9, Ashradadana Vimuke Pyashrinvati Yaschopadesha Shivanama Parada. What's that one?
To not have complete faith in the chanting of Hare Krishna?
No, it's an offence to preach the glories of the holy name to the faithless. So, for instance, you might, if you're a devotee, you might get hassled by, some fanatic in some other religion. You're serving the wrong God, right? They use this line, you're serving the wrong God. You're going to hell, right? You should serve, this one's the only way, or that one's the only way, right? And then if you start trying to preach to them, then they become angry, and then they start blaspheming. So this is why you don't preach to the faithless, because if you preach to them, then they become angry and they dig a bigger hole for themselves. They're already in a hole, but the hole might be a shallow hole. They might be following some religious process, right, which will gradually elevate them. But if you agitate them by trying to convert them, right, then they become blasphemous. So you're digging a bigger hole. Okay, number 9. Number 10. Shuti pinama mahatmya ya piti mahitona ha aham mamadi parmo ramni namni sofya parada krit. Got that one?
No? To maintain material attachments and to chant without attention.
Right. When they heard the glories of the transcendental holy name of the Lord, but nevertheless continues in the materialistic concept of life, thinking, I am this body, and everything belonging to this body is mine, aham mameti, and does not show respect and love for the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, that is an offence. There's also a subtitle on that called Apa Pramada, and that is to be inattentive in chanting the holy names. So it's an offence to be inattentive while chanting. Inattentive chanting without absorption is the root cause of all offences. So you might be like me, chanting for 50 years, but if you're not chanting with attention, Shrama evahi kevalam, it's all a useless waste of time. Right? So, any questions, comments on any of the 10 offences? In the chanting of the holy name? If not,
No, I've heard Gurudev say, even if we chant with offence, which most of us, I should say, which I do, then this is called Nam Aparad. Aparad means offences to the holy name. But still, Gurudev said that's still high class, because we're chanting Hare Krishna and we've taken a vow to chant a certain number of rounds every day. So to have that commitment is still a very good quality for a devotee.
if you consider there's 6 billion people on the planet, how many of them are chanting Hare Krishna? Right? Even if they're chanting offensively, right? They're still higher than that, 5.999 billion other people that are not chanting the name of God. Right? They may be leading a pious life. They may be looking after their mother and father. They may be doing all kinds of welfare activities. But if someone that's chanting Hare Krishna is actually better situated. Okay, are you going to say something on this one?
Yes, but we should be aware of the offences and then try to eradicate them. Yeah.
Right. The idea is that we don't stay in primary school. When you go to primary school, you learn 2 + 2. So, if you're going to university and you haven't learned, calculus. You know calculus? Yeah. Trigonometry? No? What's the other one? Sines and cosines? No? Whoa, you wasted all your life. Right? You better learn all these things.
But they don't teach that anymore, Balaram.
They'll jam them into your head, but you'll find that they're no use to you once you leave school. You'll never use them again.
He's too young, maybe. How old is he? He's 10.
Yeah, he wouldn't learn that at 10. Yeah, they wouldn't learn that at 10.
He's
Tall, but
Only what?
Only 10.
Oh, 10. So if he knows it, you know calculus? Yeah. Oh, okay. Anyway, you're big for 10. Right? Follow your dad. Right? He's a big man. Okay. Let's go through this chapter. So we'll let Krishna Prabhupada have the reins.
Well, I'm in my 70s and I still don't know calculus, so that's consolation.
You survived without it.
I have survived, by Krishna's grace.
I learned it and I've forgotten everything about it.
So I forgot to bring my little stool, but next time I'll speak up there because I think it's easier for everyone to look in the one place. But so forgive me for that. So first off, my obeisances to my Gurudev, Jnana Timarandasya Gananjala Salakaya Chakshum Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I have a little time to speak. Oh, is it okay if I don't get recorded? Sorry, it's just too much for my false ego. Thank you. So this very important day is coming up. It's called Srila Rupa Goswami's Disappearance Day. This is the day, Ki Jai, flowers for the Lord. For those of you who don't know, there's a picture of Rupa Goswami, the 6 Goswamis, right on the end of this end altar. You see with the black frame, there are 6 personalities, and Srila Rupa Goswami is one of those personalities. So our Gurudev, he would celebrate Janmashtami, which we know is coming up, for one day. He would celebrate Gaur Purnima, the appearance day of Mahaprabhu, for one day. But for the disappearance day of Srila Rupa Goswami, he would give 5-day celebration. So we have to try and understand how important is this personality of Rupa Goswami. We have learnt that Rupa Goswami is like the bard of Srimati Radhika. He's like on the earthly planet, he's considered to be Rupa Goswami, but in his constitutional spiritual form, he is Rupa Manjari, or the very intimate and most significant maidservant of Srimati Radhika. So, and in our Guru Parampara, we are called Rupa Nugas. Anuga means to follow. So we have to try and follow, right? We're aspiring to follow Rupa Goswami. So his teachings and his vicharadhara, the concepts of all the teachings and the rasa of the supreme couple may come into our hearts. So just a little bit about his life. It's called Charitra, I think, his life. So his biography, Rupa Goswami was born in 1493 in Bengal, and he was coming in the line of Yajurvedi Brahmins. So obviously that studied the Yajurveda, very, very learned, very high-class Brahmins. And his brother was Sanatan Goswami, his elder brother, and he had a younger brother also called Anupam. And Anupam at one stage had a son whose name later on was Jiva Goswami. And they are the 3 personalities. 3 of those personalities in that picture are 3 that I've mentioned: Sri Rupa, Sri Sanatan, and Sri Jiva Goswami. So, sorry, just let me check my notes. So, yes, so they had very sharp intelligence, Rupa and Sanatan, and the area they lived in was governed by Muslims at that time, and the Sultan was called Nawab Hussain Shah, and he had an astrologer who was very adept, very expert. So his astrologer said to him, these 2 personalities of Rupa and Sanatan, if you engage them in your government service, Muslim government service, your kingdom would flourish and have great prosperity. So then they were approached, these brothers of Rupa and Sanatan, and they were offered the position, but of course they declined because they're Brahmins, they're very high-class Vaishnavas from their very birth. They declined, but then the Sultan, who was really quite cruel, as some of the Muslims were, in those days, he said, well, if you don't take this position, then I will just ostracize, but I will attack all the Brahmins and suppress them and oppress them. So, of course, they had to take that position. So then they had to take on the Muslim attire, and they learnt even the language. And then, of course, they instructed the Hussain Shah in very expert ways. So he won many battles, so many opulence came to them. But, of course, in their heart, they were always Vaishnavas. So when they were in the kingdom of the Sultan, they'd heard about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in different parts of India. And they wrote a letter to him. And then Mahaprabhu said to them, because Mahaprabhu is, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Radha, Krishna combined, come in the form of a devotee. So they wrote a letter and he said, don't worry, I will come and meet with you soon. So when Mahaprabhu, who's there on the right-hand side of the altar there, on the very right, when he was going to Vrindavan, on his way he stopped at Ramakeli, and this was the place where Rupa and Sanatan lived to serve the Sultan. They had a very, very palatial, opulent place that they lived in, because of course their salary was very high. But because they were Vaishnavas, then they created a Radha Kund and a Shama Kund and a Govardhan Hill. They planted Kadamba trees. They made it look like Vrindavan because that's where their heart was always, in Vrindavan. And so many Brahmins and scholars would go there and discuss Krishna Katha with them. So then one day when Mahaprabhu came, they were so overjoyed to meet him. And then he gave them some instructions, and then he left to go to either Puri, I think it was. So
he was on the way to Vrindavan.
Vrindavan, thank you.
Don't forget he had thousands of followers with him.
Okay, thank you. So then Rupa and Sanatan became so, on fire to again meet with Mahaprabhu and serve Mahaprabhu. So somehow or other, Rupa Goswami extricated himself from government service, and then he went to a place called Prayag. It's a very, very famous place. And Sanatan, his brother, followed a little bit later. But at Prayag, Mahaprabhu met and gave what's called the Rupa Siksha. Like for 10 days, he instructed him on so many tattvas and siddhantas. And then he ordered him go to Vrindavan. So then the two brothers went to Vrindavan. All they wore was a loincloth, not even shorts. It's like shorter than shorts, and just have a very humble quilt. And they just slept under a different tree every night in Vrindavan. And Mahaprabhu had given them 4 instructions: to rediscover the holy lost places that had been covered over in time, to rediscover lost deities, to pen Vaishnav Granthas, and to also establish the principles of devotional service. So they were doing this with all their heart and soul. But then one day, Rupa Goswami became very upset because he knew that Vajranabha, Krishna's grandson, approximately 5,000 years ago, he had installed deities of Haridev and Madan Mohan and Govindadev and Gopinath, but they couldn't find some of these deities. So Rupa Goswami was crying and thinking, where am I going to find? So then one day, this beautiful little boy came along, and very handsome, with a very sweet voice. Who do you think that might have been? Krishna. But of course, Krishna is always covered by Yogamaya, so his devotees never recognize him at the time. And he said to him, "Oh, why are you so lamenting so much?" And he told him, and he said, "Don't worry, I think I know what you're looking for." He said, "Over on that hillock, a cow, a beautiful Sarabi cow, comes every day, and she empties her udder of milk into the ground on top of this hill. And I think that's where one of the deities may be located." So he said this, and then of course Rupa Goswami turned around. He couldn't see the boy, which is usually the case. Krishna had disappeared. But the next morning he went to this hillock, and he saw this Sarabi cow sauntering out of the forest and depositing her milk, and then sauntering back. And he thought, yes, something very mysterious is here. So this place is called Goma Tila, right? Til, I think, means hillock, and Goma as in cow, mother cow. So the next morning he called the villagers, and he said, "Bring hatchets and bring spades." And then they went to that spot on top of the hill, and they only excavated a little bit of dirt. And who did they find? But the beautiful deity of Govindadev, Ki Jai. And this deity, you will find him, Radha Govinda, in Jaipur, because he was shifted because of the Muslims and different issues like that. So one of the most beautiful deities, he's the heart and life of Srila Rupa Goswami. So the deity, he was found, and then of course Madan and Mohan was found, and many other deities were found. So they actually wrote so many beautiful scriptures and followed those instructions so very dearly. And then there's one pastime where Vallabhacharya comes to see Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami was just sitting on the bank of, near the Jamuna, and Vallabhacharya was an elderly Vaishnav who was also scholarly, and he came to meet Rupa Goswami, and they sat down and had Hari Katha, and he said to Rupa, "Oh, what are you writing?" And Rupa said, "Oh, I'm starting the introduction of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is a very big treatise about devotional principles, and all the compendium of Vaishnavism is in that literature." So Vallabhacharya said, "Oh, can I have a look and just see what you're writing?" So Vallabhacharya, this elderly Vaishnava, remember, he looked at this introduction and he said, I can see some faults here. And then he handed it back. Rupa Goswami just paid it as obeisances. He would, took that on his head as his for his benefit. And then they finished the conversation, and then Ballabha went down to the Jamuna to take bath. Now, whilst this was happening, Goswami, because it was a hot day, he was fanning Rupa Goswami. But when he heard this criticism, because Rupa Goswami was his Diksha guru, right? Rupa Goswami only had one Diksha disciple, and that was Jiva Goswami. He just became inflamed. So then he ran down to the Ganga on the pretext of collecting water. And he said to that Vallabhacharya, what flaws did you find in my spiritual master's introduction? And he gave him the flaws, and Jiva Goswami, being such a brilliant scholar, even though he was very, very young, he was able to cut all his criticisms and debate. So then Jiva Goswami, he stayed there for a while. Then Vallabhacharya went to, perhaps on another day, he went to Rupa and said, who is this brilliant young student that you have? And then Rupa could understand what had happened, right? And then he called Jiva and said, Jiva, he said, whatever this elderly Vaishnava has said, this is for my benefit. And he said, you had no right to criticize such a person on a high level. He said, your mind is uncontrolled, so you leave from here, go back home. And poor Jiva Goswami, because he was completely surrendered to Rupa Goswami, right? So then what happened is, I've just got a few minutes. So what happened was then he left, and some say he went into an abandoned crocodile hole and just spent the whole time there crying with no food, no water. And others said in a dilapidated temple. But anyhow, the villagers noticed this very young sadhu is just crying all day. And they told Sanatana Goswami, who used to do parikrama every day, and they told him about him. He went to him, and then he picked him up and he took him to Rupa Goswami. Jiva was in ill health, but Rupa Goswami, he brought him back to health because his brother, Sanatana, said, Rupa, you've written so many shastras, and what is one of the duties that a Vaishnav should do? And he said, we should be merciful to the Jivas. And he said, and then he brought Jiva out and said, well, what about this Jiva? Give your mercy to him. And then everything was reconciled. They brought him back to good health. And then there's so many beautiful other pastimes like that. But it's during the week, so on that day we really pray for the mercy and the moods of Srila Jiva, all of them, but Srila Rupa Goswami to enter our hearts. So Gaura Pramanande, Hari Hari Bo, Vanchakopatubhyascha.
The Yuga Dharma in Kali Yuga is to chant Hare Krishna. So that's what we're going to do. At enormous expense, we have brought one great celebrity all the way from California, and he's going to rock it up, and we're going to sing some Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Sadhu, you ready?
I think he paid his own expenses, Balaram.
Huh?
But he is a great personality.
As
all the devotees.
He was in California.
Yeah.
And he was a great musician in California. He used to break his